close guard top, posture. That's the most important thing in close guard when you're on top. To have a good posture, the first thing you need to notice is I have to be on my tiptoes. I have to be here because when I have a good posture, I have to be high. I can't be too low. And I don't have this same reaction of going to the top or backing out as if I'm doing this. You see, I have way more impact and explosion when my tiptoes are on the mat. That's not just to close guard, I just want to keep talking about it, but in every single situation you're on top, you have to get used to your tiptoes. Even though in the beginning you'll say, oh no, I can't because my tiptoes hurt when I have my tiptoes on the mat, you end up getting used to, like every situation. You know, in the first moment you enter Jiu-Jitsu, you can't close your triangle, stuff like that, but you will be able to do it. And when you do so, you're not going to be able to come and sit like this anymore because you just feel that it's wrong, especially like this. A lot of people sit like this. How can you sit like that, you know? Your tiptoes has to be here. Always with pressure. So, my posture here. I have a good posture. I'm tall. I feel tall. But if I just stay like that, the guy has his legs always pulling. You see? And my arms always to open my elbows. So I want to be able to make sure that his legs are not going to interfere and my elbows are not going to open. So I'm not going to have my posture broken down. And my tiptoes are there, fine, so the guy doesn't push me, right? So I want to have my hand not like this because I don't want any type of wrist lock, right? I want to have my palm turns that way so I can keep his chest on the mat. My elbow has to be straightened so he doesn't keep on opening. Like this, it would be easier for him to also open my elbow one way or the other. Like this is hard because my arm is straight in here, right? And always knowing that while you're defending the move, you have to follow his hip. So my hand here, kind of in the middle of the chest, maybe a little bit below. His lapel is always tight to his neck. Always making the right posture. So try not to look too much to the guy because you look to the guy, your elbow bends a little bit, right? So I'm making a little bit of posture with my head as well. And he moves his hips to one side. I'm moving with him. Because if I let him move his hip, now he has the attack. The armbar, everything. So I want to be here with the posture and always make sure that I'm going to follow his hips if I'm in the defensive position. Go ahead, Flavio, move a little bit. Look how I'm going to move with him. You see, and always make sure that his hips are going to be in the same line as mine. Let's take a look at some moves and let's break his guard. This is the safest way to open someone's guard. I'm in my partner's close guard. The first thing I want to do is grab both of his lapels and pull them tight to me. I grab both of the lapels with one hand and fold them over into my other hand. I do this the way I just explained in the intro to this series of techniques. I grab his sleeve at the wrist with my other hand. In one motion, I rock my body to the side and pull his sleeve to me to trap it between my ribs and his leg. My body is now leaning towards that side to keep his wrist trapped in this position. Now I'm going to stand up on the same side as his trapped arm. I keep my leg tied to his leg as I continue to stand up. I release his collar and push my hips forward so I'm in a good posture when I stand all the way up. I put my hand on his knee with my thumb all the way to the inside. I step backwards and to the side as I give a push on his knee to open his guard. Now I'm in a good position to start to pass his guard. This move has helped me numerous times, but this time he underhooked my leg. In one motion, I release the grip on his sleeve, drive my knee down to his belly, and push his leg away to open his guard. Notice that I had to take a step back to do so. Now I lift my hip up to move around his leg and get the pass. This time my opponent is not letting me get the grip on his sleeve. This happens a lot, but you can still open the guard. I'm going to use my hand to grip his gi near his hip. My grip is palm down, applying pressure. I bring my elbow in tight to my ribs. I'm going to stand up on the same side that I have the collar grip, so this is different than how I stood up in the previous technique. I keep my knee tight against his leg. I'm going to move my other leg to the middle of his butt and step it all the way back, away from him. Now I start to stand up, putting all my pressure on his hip as I look to the side to give me good balance. I will finish by putting my knee on the middle of his legs so I can land in a safe position. I'm in my partner's close guard, and he's going to attack the Kimura. He starts to trying to pin my hand to the mat. Now he opens his guard to start to sit up and get the Kimura. I'm going to control his leg at the knee with my free hand. Now I dip my head down and jump over his legs towards his back. I can't stay here because he's going to start cranking my arm. I have to move behind him and reach underneath to grab my own hand. Now I pull him all the way across to the other side and put my hooks in to get the back. Once again, my partner tries to attack the Kimura from the close guard. The first thing I have to do is defend my arm. So I start to move my body to the side of the trapped arm. Now I can lock the hand to my leg by stepping over the arm to trap it. If the arm is already up, I need to act fast by lifting my leg and bringing it to my hand. Now I'm going to stack him a little bit by driving my body towards his head. I put pressure on his hip with my other hand so I can posture up to straighten my arm as much as I can. I bring my hand in deep, in front of my belly, and grab my own wrist with my free hand. I must pull my hand the closest to my shoulder as possible and squeeze it so I can trap his arm on my elbow joint. I bring my elbow in and arch my shoulders back to reverse the Kimura and tap him out. This is for sure the most effective way out of the arm lock inside the close guard. My partners attack the armbar. The first thing I do is bend the arm he's attacking and grip my palm across my opposite bicep. Now I'm in a position to defend. As he starts to pass the leg over my head, I use the opposite hand to cup the back of his thigh near the knee. I start to move my knee towards his head to stack him. Right away, my other knee comes up on the middle of his lower back to keep stacking him. I continue to apply the pressure of my body over his legs and move up towards his head and feet. Be careful to never go or pass 90 degrees. I have taken all of his leverage away. I slide my grips and control his leg as I move him over on his side and take side control. This time when my opponent attacks the arm, I'm too late to catch the back of his thigh and defend the way I did in the previous technique. Instead, I grab his gi at the knee. In one motion, I step my knee away from him and pull his leg to the ground. Now I release the grip on my bicep. I drive my chin down over his leg to smash his knees down and turn my thumb towards his chest. He can't tap me anymore. I keep driving my weight down over his leg and pull my arm to escape the armbar and get the pass. If you master this technique, it will be very hard to be submitted from the triangle. This time, my partner attacks the triangle. I immediately lock my elbow tight to my side and reach across and grab his lapel with the other hand. I grab his belt with my hand near his hip and close my elbow very tight on his leg. Notice that I never look to the side of the leg tied to my neck. Now I turn my body so it's 90 degrees to him. I do this by moving my knees. I move my outside knee away from him and my inside knee towards him. Look how I have his knee trapped over my thigh. This prevents him from moving his hips. Now I release the grip on his belt and swing my arm towards his feet as I look at the same direction. This opens his guard and I'm in a good position to move to the side control. This time when he attacks the triangle, my arm is in front of him. I'm not going to try to fight to get it all the way to the other side. I'm just going to make a grip on his gi pants, right where my hand is, and posture up right away. It's very important to pull my elbow tight across his hip and reach with the other hand to control his collar. I look up and pull his collar to me, and I get up on my toes. I step up with one foot, then the other. I have to keep my hips low and looking up to take some of the pressure off my head. I swing my leg over his head on the same side that is controlling his collar and sit back on the mat to right away lock my feet. I grab his leg here near the knee and arch back to open his legs. I underhook both legs. I can lean to one side to bring one knee under, then lean to the other side to do the same thing. I am in a good position to pass his guard. This is one of the most effective defense for omoplata. My partner has me in the omoplata. I put the closest knee to him on his belly and step up with my outside foot to base. He's blocking me from rotating around with his grip on my belt. In one movement, and this has to be quick, I'm going to grab his foot, and as I step forward, I lift my hip up and turn towards him. My thumb is rotating towards him to prevent the arm lock. If necessary, shaking my arm to get my elbow free. Now I can pull my arm out and get the pass. Once again, my partner is attacking the omoplata. The first thing I do is to put my knee on his belly with the top of my foot tied to his side. This prevents him from sitting up. Remember, he can't apply the omoplata until he sits up. I have my other hand and knee on the ground here to keep my base. Now I step up on my foot. With all my weight on my knee, I swing over to the other side of my partner, and as I get there, I try to put my hand around the other leg and open my arm to end inside control. Close guard. Let's talk about one of the favorite moves of most of the beginners. Why is it so common that the beginners like the move? They don't even know how to explain, but it's actually all connected. Because to mount on someone, to take their back, you have to get some experience. But to close the guard, you don't need as much experience. And actually close guard is the same as all the others. I'm still with my guard closed here, but I'm taking his back. All these moves are connected. Look, he's gonna take his turn. He's gonna turn. Scoot a little bit for me, please. So all the moves here are connected. You see the back, the mount, and the close guard. They're all connected, but the close guard is so much easier to get. And that's why, the guy on bottom feels safer, and it's easier for him to play, easier for him to get into the position. So that's why he likes it so much. Flavio here, he has to break my guard, like in all the other positions that we spoke, the mount and the back, before he attacking me. So I'm a step ahead of him. He has to get out of the position while I'm about to attack him. So how am I going to make sure that the guy is going to stay on my close guard? Because it's not just about the attacks. The attacks you will see it in the techniques. But I need to make sure that he's going to stay there. My legs are going to be crossed, right? It doesn't matter which side it's going to be crossed there. His posture needs to be breaking every time he tries on standing up, right? The guy standing up, I always try to hold both of his elbows and open the elbows, you see here, to bring the guy to me. Or use my legs. Sometimes I need to use both. Every time the guy goes, stand up just a little bit, I already pull him to me. I don't let him stand up. I don't let him break. The guy holds me. I try on breaking this. I want to keep him here. Why do I need to switch the position if I'm in such predominant position? We have a lot of attacks from there because it's an easy position that you guys are going to get. We're going to do a lot of recovers to the close guard. Let's take a look at it and let's learn, because in the close guard, you'll use those moves. This is my highest percentage armbar from the close guard. I concentrate on the arm that is gripping my lapels. I break his posture by pulling his elbow out and using my legs to bring him forward. As soon as he postures up, I use both of my hands to push his elbow across his body. I also turn my body at an angle. This allows me to drive his arm all the way across to the other side. Now my left hand controls his head and I pull him to me so I can make a tight grip on his armpit. I have his arm trapped and there is no way he can take it out. I position myself straight in front of him and put my foot on his hip. I move my hips away from his so I can bring my foot that is on his hips over his shoulder. Now I lock my legs the best I can over his shoulder. Both hands grip his wrist so I can control his thumb up and raising my hips to tap him out. If he stacks his weight, I will put my forearm on his face to help my other leg swing over his head and clamp down on his neck. My right foot will immediately go towards his head without crossing my feet, so I can put pressure with my thigh on his armpit to move my hip to the side of his head. Now his head is on the ground and he cannot stack on me. I will finish the armbar, squeezing my thighs together and raising my hips with his thumb up. One of the moves that I will most use in this DVD is the triangle. So it's important that you guys get all the details. And also I want to explain a few things that some people have a lot of doubt and think that they can't do a triangle. And I'll explain that anyone can be doing this move here. So let me get you on my triangle here. I have to have my thigh, the back of my thigh here, my hamstring, on his neck, right? And my calf here, putting a lot of pressure. Even if I can't lock, right, I'm still gonna do my best here to do so. Look, can't lock, I lock it there, right? The best I can. Can even have your arm here. Other thing is, the guy looking up is not good for you because he's gonna start making posture. So it's good to control the head, but when you control the head, don't pull down. Because you pull down, you messed up on the move. Because now I'm not actually applying any pressure on him. You can relax. I'm not actually applying any pressure on him because his chin is going towards his chest. So it's important that I'm turning his head to this side. You see here, always towards my hamstring there. Because now he gets choked on his throat. You see how it's tight there? If I really wanted to, it would have the pressure here. Look, right? So I don't ever want to do this. Always want to turn it to the side here before applying the pressure. So then I tried to lock, I couldn't, right? I did my best here to lock my triangle. I want to have this arm going to the other side there, right? But the guy's not going to let me do this. So it's important that this is very tight so I can lift my hip up without worrying of him taking this arm out. Because I really need to lift my hip all the way. Because look what happens here when I lift. His arms go to this side, right? So now I'm going to lift my hip and go with both of my hands, making a frame, one in the elbow and one in the triceps. Don't go in the forearm, otherwise you're not gonna be able, you see, to push it tight to him. He's still too strong to open his arm. But if you're here, you're stronger than him. Then I'm switching this, and look how I'm pushing all the way towards him, moving my body to the side. Because I want him to land with the elbow outside of my hip. And I want to pull him right away. Look, I want to pull him back and control my leg here, trapping his arm. So please take your arm out there. He moves his body, but his arm keeps sticking out. Look how his elbow is still there. You see? Then I'm going to adjust my hip again, my lock again. Of course, I could. You can put your foot here, adjust it tighter. Right? But let's say I can't lock my legs, you know. My hand is going to come over here. And it's not just coming here. It needs to be very tight to his ear. You see, because my arm is going to use it as an extra leg. You see here? And this arm is going to come over. If you can, of course, all the way with the elbow joint on the knee. It's not everybody that is that flexible, so I'm just going to go all the way here. Locking my elbows, you see here? Very tight to the guy. So both, one here, one there. And now I can start having the pressure of his arm and of his chin looking to this side here. Lifting my hip up, not all the way, but just a little bit, and pulling it down. My knee squeezing on the side of his neck. He's a little bit purple, but that's fine, right? So I can tap him out. So just a little bit quicker. Here now, me closing this triangle. You know, if you can, boom, lock. Look how my hip go up. I start moving. This hand goes here. Then I switch. I push. Look how I bring him to my side and start scooting. I'm pulling him all the way so he doesn't take the arm out. He's locked in the position. My hand is already positioned there. I'm already going all the way here to open, escape my hip, to lock the best I can. Then this hand is going to come here. I'm going to hold, and I'm going to make sure that my hip is going to come up as I pull him down. Now you know how to close your triangle and finish anyone. When your partner grips with both hands at the belt, try this attack. His elbows are tight to his body, and it's difficult to open them to break his posture. Instead of fighting him, I'm going to grip both of his sleeves at the wrist. I open my guard and escape my hips to one side. My knee comes up, and I trap his arm with the lower part of my shin. Then, I push my knee all the way across his belly. I keep his wrist pinned as my leg slides up and over the back of his neck to lock the triangle. Now I need to move his arm to the opposite side. I bridge back onto my shoulders and lift my hips high. Now I use both hands on the back of his bicep to push his bicep towards his chin. Now I pull him to me with my legs and make sure his arm is trapped tight against my stomach. I can begin to make the adjustments to tighten the triangle. With my outside arm, I trap his arm and grab my knee. I reach all the way around with my outside knee with one hand and around his head with the other hand. Now I squeeze everything together and lift my hips to get the tap. My partner stands up in my close guard while pushing down on my biceps. Immediately, I grab both of his ankles and open my guard, letting my hips drop down. I keep my legs squeezed as my knees are pinching together. Now I pull on his ankle as I push into him with my legs. When he falls, it's very important that I control his heels so he can't come back on top. I have my elbow posted on the mat. I release his other ankle and post my other hand back behind me. You can see my shoulder now face down towards the mat. I can push and rotate my hips towards him using my hands to come on top. I keep scooting back until I end in the mount or take his back. So I set this sweep up just like the previous technique. I sweep him and immediately control both of his ankles to prevent him from escaping. This time, he reaches across and tries to push me back to keep me from moving to the top position. I'm going to reach over his arm on the same side and post my other hand on the mat. Now I lift my hips up, deep into his armpit, as I rotate to my side and throw my leg over his head. I continue to rotate, keeping his arm trapped, with my arm near the elbow. I reach across and grab his pants as I straighten his arm. I use the grip on his pants and let my leg that is hooked under his chin to roll him over. I finish in good position, controlling his wrist with both of my hands. Now I squeeze my knees together as I lift my hips to get the tap. My partner begins to control my arm. As soon as he grabs my sleeve, I grab his opposite sleeve like this. As he stands up, I underhook his leg with my free hand and pull myself tight to his leg. Now look how I switch my grip to the same hand that is underhooking his leg. I open my guard and swing my outside leg while the other leg hooks over his arm. I apply pressure with the leg over his arm to drive him to the mat. I switch the grip on his sleeve to my other hand and grab his knee. As soon as I grab his knee, I sit up and reach across his lower back to grab his waist. Now I use the hand on his knee to block him as I pull with the other hand and scoop my hips out until he falls. I drive all my weight towards his hips to keep him from escaping and lean forward to apply the omoplata. As my partner stands up, I reach across and break his grip by grabbing his palm and rotating it open. Just like in the previous technique, I'll underhook the leg. Now I use my hand to post on the mat near my head. Notice my palm is down with the fingers facing forward. I lift my hip up and drive it toward his knee. At the same time, I use my elbow joint to pull his ankle and continue to drive toward that side. As he falls back, I post both of my hands on the mat close to the outside of his legs, shoulder facing down. I push and rotate my hips back over the top and to the side of him to end in mount. I reach across and grab his sleeve and pass it to the other hand. So I'm now grabbing his sleeve on the same side. I underhook his other leg and get him out of base by lifting my hip up and driving it toward his knee, with my guard still closed. This time, he's going to try to come on top by posting his hand on the mat. This creates enough space for me to pull my leg out and close the triangle. Now I can release his leg and start to adjust everything up the same way I demonstrate in the triangle details video. I'm going to be trying to demonstrate a little bit of the Kimura setup because I'm going to be using a lot of this setup here in the close guard for the techniques. So there's a few ways I can do this, right? One way I can push the arm here. Another way I can rotate the arm and catch it and pin it to my hip. Very important that it's very tight there. Another way I can push, I rotate, but the guy rotates back again. I open his elbows. And when he comes back, I pin it again. Before I do that, if the guy pulls that hand on the mat, I cannot have the hand go to my hip. So it's important that my hip goes to the hand. Or I start all over, right? So I get to the point here. Look, my hip goes there, so I can open his elbow here with my leg. And you can use the help of this hand here as well, right, to get tight here. Now I want to pin my hand on the top of my knee here. It can be in your shin, depends where your elbow lands. So it's actually you're aiming with the elbow here and grabbing wherever. Pulling this and making sure that your elbow is pushing down the whole time. So the guy doesn't posture. Posture back. Look, he postured, but his arm stays there. So look, I just have to move my elbow into the mat. Look here. Now his arm comes up, and I can easily make the lock. Right, once again, make the posture very high this time. You see, my foot is straight, not here, otherwise I'm losing him, right? I want to have my foot straight, even if it's not on the hip, at least it should be straightened with this here. Go ahead, posture. You see here? Then this always pulling, so I can make sure that I'm doing that and not coming all the way high and have him posture and defend his arm before. I'm gonna be using this here to set it up my attacks from close guard. To apply a Kimura, you shouldn't sit up. Otherwise, your opponent will easily defend by posturing up and straightening his arm. My partner is in my close guard and has good posture. I'm going to take both of my hands and bring them together underneath his arm, almost like a praying position. Then I'm going to grab one of his wrists and pin it to my thigh. I don't want to let him post it on the mat because it will be difficult for me to move it. Now, instead of sitting up to reach over his arm for the Kimura, I'm going to bring my knee straight up to me to bring his arm to me. With my other hand, I reach and grab my leg just below the knee, so he doesn't posture back up. I concentrate all my weight on my elbow around his back in case he tries to posture back up. Now my body crunches a little to the side as I put my elbow right next to my hip. In a quick motion, I kick my leg straight back and reach over the top of his arm to grab my own wrist and lock the Kimura. Now I throw my leg over his wrist and across his back and start to escape my hip. I continue to escape my hips until I am on my side so he cannot regain his posture. I also need to be pulling his hips to mine using both of my heels. Sometimes he will tap just by doing so. If not, I'll finish by slowly rolling his wrist toward his shoulder. Notice that my Kimura grips never got looser. This move starts with the same Kimura setup. I pin his wrist to my hip and bring my knee straight up and reach over the top to grab my own leg to control the shoulder. I drop my elbow down to the mat and kick my leg straight back to grab my wrist to lock the Kimura. This time, my partner reaches under his thigh and grabs his gi to prevent me from finishing the technique. I kick my leg to push his hips backwards. At the same time, I pull his arm straight out by pulling his elbow towards me. Now I escape my hip out to the side to break his grip so I can finish just like the previous technique. I control his wrist and pin it to my hip. I bring my leg up to drive him forward and reach through to grab the Kimura. My opponent grabs under his thigh to defend the Kimura, and I can't get his arm out. I post my hand on the mat, and my other hand keeps control of his wrist. Now I pinch my knees together and drive my hips up and forward into him as I rotate to the side of his trapped arm. I sweep him to end in the mount position. This time, my partner postures up, so now I'm going to move to my third attack. I pull my arm out and go across the back of his neck and use my elbow to drive his head down. I escape my hip out to the opposite side. I rotate my arm around his head and underneath his neck. I like to cup his chin with my entire hand so my fingers are actually on his cheek. Now my other hand goes underneath his armpit and reaches to grip the other hand in a monkey grip. You can see it here. I move my hips directly back underneath him. I want to always keep my head up off the mat because if I put my head on the mat, I'm giving him room to escape his head. I can use that same foot to push on his knee and get him out of balance, falling even deeper inside my choke. I start to lift my hip up to get the tap. This technique I have done numerous times, in my weight and also in the absolute. Once again, same setup as the previous technique. You can start to see how many options you have of the same setup. This time my partner defends the guillotine by controlling my wrist and preventing the choke. Now I escape my hip all the way out to the same side he's controlling my wrist, so his elbow don't reach the ground and stop my leg. I can easily free my leg and throw it up and over his defending arm. Now I push his shoulder with my leg and take my arm out. I lock the triangle and finish as I demonstrate in the triangle detail video. This is one of my favorite no-gi sweeps that works on the gi as well. I'm having trouble controlling his wrist, so I sit up to attack the kimura. This time I bring my armpit all the way across the back of his neck to pin his head down. I escape my hips so I can try to get the guillotine. But sometimes there is not enough room to get your arm in, so I bring my leg up and wrap my arm around my thigh. I escape my hips a bit more to the side so I can create room to put my hook in. I trap his wrist on the other side and chop his leg in. I use my hook on the other side to sweep him and end in mount. Make sure to hold your grips until you are on top to prevent him from taking your back. I grip his sleeve, and with my opposite hand, I go under his wrist. I pull up with both my hands, and at the same time, I use my legs to bring him forward and break his grip. I keep the grip on his sleeve and move my body to the side so I can reach deep over his arm near the shoulder. I can now reach through and grab his collar as I put my shoulders back on the mat. I let go of his sleeve now and use the other hand to help adjust the grip. For these first moves, I don't need to have a deep grip on his lapel, but it will work fine either way. With my other arm, I underhook his leg. I want to continue to pull my head very tight to his knee. I wing my hips out, once, twice, or 3 times. Whatever you need to get the angle so I'm perpendicular to him. To get the sweep, make sure you swing your legs towards his head, not towards his opposite side. When I come up on top, I want to be in this position here, with control of his arm, so I am set up to attack. This happened to be one of the moves I most do from close guard. I control his posture and break his grip just like the previous technique. This time, he improves his base by stepping up and posturing up, preventing the sweep. I release the grip on his collar and grip behind his tricep. This helps straighten his arm. I swing my leg out and hook his neck. I can get the tap here by lifting my hips. Okay, let's look at a different way to overhook your opponent's arm. This time, I'm going to reach up and under his arm and grip his tricep. With my other hand, I grip the back of his neck and pull him to me. As he sits up, I sit up with him. I try to pull down as I walk my arm towards the back of his arm. I close his elbow inside my body to break his grip. I reach under his arm and grab his collar. This time, when I use my other hand to adjust my grip, I want to reach deep and tight into his collar. Now I use my hand to push on his shoulder as I escape my hip to the outside. I post my foot on his hip to keep him from moving to that side. With my other hand, I reach over his shoulder and grab as much of the material on the back of his gi. I pull the material until my wrist is on his neck and then do the most important detail of this move. I must turn my wrist until my thumb is facing up. Now, I lock my elbow down underneath him to prevent him from pushing me. I'm going to apply the choke by using my leg to push away from him. The further I push away, the tighter the choke gets until he taps. I use the same method as the previous technique to overhook his arm. I reach under his arm and deep and tight into his collar. So I grab as much of material on the back of his gi and tuck my elbow underneath. This time, as I try to escape my hip to the outside, he follows me, and I can't create the distance to get the last choke. With the blade of my arm, I go under and lift his chin the highest possible while I pull on the collar to get the choke. This is a triangle setup that can be used in many different occasions. I use the same method as the previous technique to overhook his arm. This time, as I try to apply the choke, my opponent pushes my arm back in to take pressure off the choke. As soon as I see him push down on my elbow, I bring my leg over his arm. I keep the grip on his back while I lock the triangle. To finish the triangle, I bridge back onto my shoulders and lift my hips high. I use both of my hands on the back of his arm to push his arm across to the other side. I pull him to me with my legs and make sure his arm is trapped tight against my stomach. Now I can begin to make the adjustment to tighten the triangle. With my outside arm, I trap his arm and grab my knee. With the other hand, I grab my shin and pulse my foot on his hip to adjust my angle, so I can make the triangle tighter. I reach all the way around my outside knee with one hand and around his head with the other hand. Now I squeeze everything together and lift my hips to get the tap. I grip his sleeve and with my opposite hand, I go under his wrist. I pull up with both my hands and at the same time, use my legs to bring him forward and break his grip. I keep the grip on his sleeve and move my body to the side, so I can reach deep over his arm near the shoulder. I can now reach through and grab his collar as I put my shoulders back on the mat. I release the grip on his lapel and grip across his bicep. With the other hand, I push his elbow in, across my body, and grip across his tricep to hold his arm in place. I place my foot on his hip and use it to get the angle to pass my leg over his shoulder and lock my leg as tight as possible. Without his overhooked arm, he cannot defend. I could still bring my other leg over his head and clamp down on his neck. Now I move the back of my leg inside his armpit and my hips to the side of his head so I can finish the armbar, controlling his wrist with a thumb up, squeezing my knees together and lifting my hips. I did this move a couple of times at the 2011 Worlds. I reach under his arm and deep and tight into his collar. I have the overhook, but he has his elbow on the mat on one side and his arm tied to me on the other. So I hold his wrist and hip escape all the way back underneath him. I pull my knee out as far as I can. He's still trapping my leg. I continue to escape my hips. Now I kick up, almost like I'm sweeping him. As he tries to recover, I keep my arm straightened and bring my foot inside and under his arm to attack the triangle. I release the grip on his lapel and lock the triangle. Now I finish the exact same way as I described in the triangle detail video. This is a move that I developed by myself as a blue belt and haven't changed much. The first time competing at the Worlds, in 2003, I submitted 4 opponents with the same move. This time I reach under his arm on one side and around his neck on the other. I pull him down to me and control his posture. I reach underneath to get the underhook and control his collar. My opponent tries to make posture and project his body to the outside, trying to rotate his arm and take it out. I post my elbow on the ground, and in one motion, I release his collar, sliding my grip to his elbow. At the same time, I'm lifting my hip up and towards his hips. I rotate my hips to bring my knee around and over his shoulder, and my foot is hooking the back of his neck. It's important to know that you can only do that if your other foot is on your tiptoes and the leg is straightened to use the back part of it, knee and hamstring, to push his body up and create space for the other leg. With his arm still trapped under my arm and my knees together, he has no escape and must tap. This is also one of my favorite no-gi moves from close guard. I reach under his arm on one side and around his neck on the other. I pull him down to me. I reach over his arm and underhook my leg to trap his arm. Now I grab the back of his collar. If I need to, I can use the other hand to adjust the grip. I push on his bicep and hip out as I bring my knee in under his other arm and escape my hip. The more I escape to the side, the more I can drive his head down. I loop my shin in front of his face. I take my hand out as I escape my hip away from him. I block his knee with one hand, and the other hand reaches across his body to grab his hip. I continue to hip away from him, towards his head to break his posture. Now I can sit up with all my weight near his hips so he doesn't posture back up. I will continue on driving my body forward, pushing on his hips until he taps.